Hey everyone, Jack here. Welcome to my first video back on YouTube after my little announcement that some of you may have seen last week. I'm back on YouTube, decided to start something new with this channel, so thank you for joining me on this first installment. The first one's always the hardest, I believe, so wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do to kick things off today. But I thought I should just dive straight in, and I wanted to answer a couple of the questions that I've got. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's kind of responded to the idea that I put out on that introduction video, which was to make this as reactive as possible, and I was overwhelmed with the number of comments that I've got, not just on YouTube but on Facebook, Instagram and stuff as well. People were asking me all sorts of questions and making all sorts of suggestions for things they'd like to see from this channel. I really appreciate that. It's been really helpful to try and narrow down what I want to go for with this channel, because the task I set myself was quite broad. I just wanted to make this a place to talk about music and guitars in general, and that in itself is a big task. So thank you guys and girls, all the people who've commented and asked me questions. I really appreciate it, and it's certainly going to set this channel in a new direction that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So thank you very much for that, first of all. The way I want to do these as well is that I just want to kind of make these fairly free-flowing. I'm going to try and keep editing to a minimum. I'm going to try and keep multi-tracking and serious recording techniques to a minimum. I've just got a camera with a microphone on it. That's the way I want to keep most of these things. If I do get to doing any proper gear demos where I'm showing you some electric tones, or if I'm showing you some stuff with acoustic guitars as well, then I will make an effort to record it properly. But for the most part, I just want this to be a free-flowing thing where I can mainly just pull apart some of your questions and answer them, maybe with a little bit of playing in and amongst the talking. So this is the way I want to do it. So bear with me, I'm going to kind of have warts and all in these videos, but that's the way I want it to be. So what I thought I'd do today was kind of cover all the ground that I've set myself. So I'll answer some of your questions. As I said, that's the main thing I want to do, make this as reactive as possible and kind of build a little bit of a community here with some back and forth, and thankfully that's got off to a good start. So thank you for that. I want to do that. A couple of gear questions. Actually, I've had a lot of gear questions, and I did say in that introduction that I'd like to not just have this channel be about gear. I am going to show you plenty of gear, and that's going to come in later installments. With this first episode, I thought I'd just sit down with an acoustic guitar and talk to you. Also, because of this lockdown situation, I don't actually have all my gear at home, so I can't actually show you some of the things that I've been asked about, specifically relating to the Line 6 Helix and stuff like that. I don't even have it with me, so you'll have to be a little bit patient with stuff like that, guys, but I will make sure I get around to answering every single one of those questions that stack up in the comments, whether it's here or on Facebook or Instagram. So bear with me for that, but I am going to touch on gear a little bit. And you may have seen recently I posted a video on my Instagram where I was talking about a new mystery amplifier that's been added to the collection. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this video, but you'll have to stay tuned to future installments to find out what that actually was. Okay, so let's get cracking with a couple of questions. I'll just pick this straight off the YouTube video that I posted last week, so thank you to everyone who posted on there. Also thank you to everyone who asked me questions elsewhere, but for this time I just wanted to pick two questions that I thought really summarised what I want to do with this channel and the kind of direction I'm going to put it in, and they're really good questions. So, Mr. Steve Roberts asked me about sense of rhythm. Very kindly said, seem to have a good sense of rhythm in my playing. How did that kind of come about? And I really appreciate that compliment, first of all, because I think it's not overly apparent to all guitar players or all musicians in general. When you start to play, your first instinct is to learn, not necessarily techniques, but certainly you're more technically minded, because I guess you want to impress other musicians, and that oftentimes stems from technical playing. And that was certainly the direction that I initially set off in. And I did have a long period of time where I focused a lot on technical playing. The rhythmic side of stuff never really fell into that, because if you're playing a lot of technical solo guitar, solo as in lead guitar, I don't mean by myself, I was often playing along to backing tracks and stuff like that of some of my favourite guitar tunes, or the bands I was playing in when I was younger were generally fairly driven by rock leads and stuff like that. So that was my forte, that was what I kind of grew up with, was playing blues and rock, and later on a little bit heavier styles as well. The sense of rhythm, though, doesn't necessarily come from that school of thought. Obviously, in retrospect, you have to have great rhythm to really kind of get the essence of a great grooving rock track across, or if it's a metal track, you've really got to focus on the tightness of the rhythm. But I think what most people refer to with rhythm is that kind of groove that allows you to sync in with a band, a bass player and a drummer, keyboard players as well, brass sections. If you want to kind of tackle any of that kind of band setup, you've got to have a good grasp on rhythm. And that didn't come to me till I was a little bit older, up to the point of, I'm going to say I was 18, and I joined some touring theatre bands, touring theatre shows, which was all to click on in-ears, and the music was R&B, funk, soul, with some rock thrown in as well. That was kind of what piqued my interest initially, but I had to learn a whole new skill set with that kind of theme of music, especially playing to click. My timing had to be on it, and I think I've generally always had fairly good timing. I've been doing sessions for quite a long time, on and off, and that obviously instills in you a good sense of time as well. But in terms of locking in with a band, with a really groovy bass player and a really capable drummer, I hadn't really had to consider doing that to that kind of degree before that point. So it was really then that I think I started to become very aware of rhythmic sensibilities, and I just wanted to be as on that click as I possibly could, even sometimes to the detriment of the drummer. You know, so if sometimes you're playing with musicians, it never happened to me, fortunately, but in my mind I thought, well, if the rest of the band isn't keeping up, I'm going to keep up with that click. Which, thinking back on it, is not necessarily the most musical approach. Obviously you want to lock in with the band more so, but I was so obsessed with going after that click, and so I always try and instill that in myself, even when I'm playing without a click. So let me give you an example. One of the tracks was a Michael Jackson track. I just had to focus in on learning. Up to that point I've been playing really brash rock parts. All I had to do in this particular track was that wasn't part of what I played. I'm just throwing in some context there as to what that song was. So that simple part, by itself, it sounds pretty dull, sounds pretty boring, and unless you put the right inflections on there, it doesn't really stand out from the track. And that was kind of the whole point. The whole goal is to meld with the rest of the band and the rest of the song. And so that was kind of the turning point that made me realise just how important guitar is as an orchestral kind of instrument. Obviously not in the classical sense, but I'm talking about in terms of building up a song and making it very much part of the framework of that song rhythmically as well as melodically. So there's a very important distinction there. I think everyone has a certain turning point, whether it's just listening to a great funk record for the first time or really delving into some of the great R&B guitar players of the past. Whatever it might have been, there'll definitely be a turning point. And maybe that hasn't quite happened to you if you're a younger player just yet. That's not to say that that's any detriment to your playing, because technical ability is just as important as rhythmic ability. But for me, and the direction I've since gone in, and certainly like to bring into the Peach Guitars demos, rhythm is very, very important. So that's one big question. I've kind of broadly tackled it, and I will talk about this more in the future about rhythm, but it's such an important thing, and I really remain conscious of it at all times. So I'm really thankful, Steve, that you picked up on that point. So that's question number one. I do want to also just quickly talk about a question from Montreal Guitarist here on YouTube as well, who basically asked me, have I ever taken lessons, or did I kind of learn everything by ear? Now this is far too broad a question to cover in this one video. I will say I've never had proper guitar lessons. I've always relied on my ear. And more recently you do tend to rely, just for ease of learning tracks, if you've got to learn tracks for a gig, I do rely a lot on YouTube, and not really tabs, but just watching people who already know how to play something is very useful. But developing your ear is such a crucial part of playing, and that's kind of a cliche that's bandied around, you've got to have a good ear. It takes a different kind of ear for every style that you want to approach. Sometimes it's about the feel of the music, sometimes it's about the exact note choices that you make. And that's all comes from allowing your ear to inform your playing rather than relying on it. Now I'm kind of getting a little bit broad here again, but it's a very good question, and I do think that talking about how you use your ears to develop your musical sensibility. It's very important. I want to talk about that much later because there's so much music that I want to talk about that inspired me from when I was young, still continues to inspire me to this day, and a lot of it has to do with just what catches your ear initially. I've never set out really to focus on certain styles of music because they're technically challenging. I'd certainly like to from this point on because there's a lot of styles I've never been able to master. All the stuff that I grew up on, all the stuff I love is just stuff that caught my ear straight away. And so that is why I tend to play stuff, learning it by ear, because it's the stuff I want to play, it's the stuff I want to hear, recreated properly. Hopefully that makes sense. As I say, I'm going to talk about this a lot more in the future. And that this is also in no way to detract from the value of a good guitar lesson. I still get a lot of benefit, I think, from playing with great musicians and getting proper lessons from good musicians. But that's all to come. So, you know, it's a good question and I appreciate the question. But the ear is something I'm very keen on kind of suggesting to people that they do, that they work on if they can. And that's something that I do a lot as well. So I'm going to talk about that more in the future, as I say. But those are two big questions I wanted to start with there. Hopefully this will set the pace and set the theme for what I'm going to do going forward, which is just trying to break down these themes that people put to me. You guys are asking some big questions, and I am going to get into my personal history as a player as well, which a lot of people seem to ask about, which I really appreciate. And I do want to keep this general, don't want to just talk about myself, but I really appreciate the questions that people are putting to me. It's clear that, you know, people are just wanting to know where I've come from musically, which I do appreciate. So I'm going to do my best to get to all of those different points. Wanted to start with those two today, though. Okay, so I said I'd hint at some gear questions. A lot of people are asking me about Line 6 stuff because I have been known on the Peach Guitars channel to use various Line 6 products. I love Line 6 products. I use a Helix all the time, HX effects. My little HX Stomp is actually just behind me. Again, this is quite a big topic. And it's something that we still see on the Peach channel, is that some people just don't get the digital thing, and I can understand that. But there's certainly elements to the way that you can use these digital products in a way that you just can't with analog gear, and the results 9 times out of 10 are just as impactful. If you're on a gig situation or if you're playing a session or something like that, you get just phenomenal results out of these digital pieces of gear. Line 6 especially, that's the stuff that I've been most familiar with. It's the stuff that seems to be the most gig-hardy, gig-proof kind of pieces of gear, so I definitely want to talk about that in the future. As I say, I don't actually have my Helix at the moment. It's somewhere up in the middle of the country, I think, but once I can get hold of that gear again, I will spend time to talk you through how I use that stuff in live situations. And there's certainly some surprising techniques I think that you can do with these things that you may not have considered before that I definitely like to touch on. So that's as much as I want to go into gear today. But however, I will just say that, as I said at the top of this video, I talked about the mystery amp that has appeared on my Instagram profile. If you haven't seen that video already, do me a favour and go to Instagram and watch that video. See if you can work out what you think it is. I think it's going to surprise quite a lot of people, and I want to keep the mystery up for a little bit longer, so I'll probably touch on it in the next video, but please keep your guesses coming in because I'm very keen to see what it sounds like to your own ears, and then maybe when you find out what it is, it might challenge your perceptions a little bit. Anyway, that's speculation. I just want to play you out now with a little bit of this gorgeous Taylor acoustic. I'm going to try and break this up so that it's not all electric playing in all these videos and it's not all acoustic playing in these videos. Some of these videos are going to be a little bit more candid than others. Other times I will make the effort, as I've said, to be really gear specific. But most of the time I'm going to have some kind of guitar in my hand, whether I play it or not. So thanks guys for watching this first video. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this will give you a bit more of an idea of where I want to go with this channel. Keep questions coming in because that's what I'm going to kind of rely on picking from every video. I'm going to pick a couple of questions that I'll try and answer. So until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay loving lockdown life, and I'll see you when I see you in the future. Cheers, guys.